Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Marvel Plus podcast, the show where we talk the Marvel shows over on Disney Plus and how they connect to the MCU. My name is Bret, aka Enigma9011, and you can catch the live recording of this podcast over on twitch.tv/Enigma9011. You can drop a follow over there. You'll get notified when we go live, so you can join on the fun theory talk, conversation, and spoilers galore. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and not podcast services. Go to YouTube the very next day, or it drops over there. You can check it out. Let us know in the comments what you think, and we can have some fun time talking some Marvel stuff. Today, we're recapping Loki Season 2, just to kind of overall 6 episodes, what happened, talking about the finale, what we think is going to go on, and the aftermath of the events. So, just general thoughts. I thought this season was pretty good. I really enjoyed everything and the story that they were telling with Loki and his journey, obviously, after dealing with the aftermath of Season 1. He Who Remains, Kang being killed, Sylvie doing stuff, and then obviously meeting the cast of characters, Mobius, B-15, Ramona, Miss Minutes throughout the first season. Enjoyed the story that they were telling here and continuing the kind of tense nature of the story. I will admit, with the first season, it was very interesting and intriguing, just kind of opening this Pandora's box of the timelines and multiple universes, and especially with the comic history, like just thinking of what they're going to possibly do with the cinematic universe and having those doors wide open, at least for the first time with this timeline thing, before obviously we got into a Doctor Strange scenario, and how the rest of Phase 4 and 5 would start expanding this out. This seemed to be the first inkling or really moment that we were going kind of hard with this. So in terms of that, the first season was very interesting, but there was a lot of exposition that we had to get through and a lot of talking, introducing new characters, talking about the plans, the plots, everything that was going on. And from an entertainment standpoint, I don't know if it hooked me in that way. It hooked me in terms of more of like what's going on, the narrative, learning that kind of stuff. And I feel like this definitely was better in terms of enjoyment. Granted, makes sense. You have to lay down the groundwork before you can start really getting the ball rolling. So I understand why Season 1 was necessary. Duh. But I'm going to say I definitely enjoyed this season a little bit more. So we open up just kind of right where we left off with the hustle and bustle of Loki in the panic mode, trying to figure out how to restore what's going on with these branching timelines and how to get it all back under control. Unfortunately, he's jumping around times. It seemed, at least originally, he was kind of blipping from timeline to timeline as we had him meet up with Mobius and B-15, and they didn't even recognize him. Turns out he was time traveling. I think they called it slipping in this, where he was literally being pulled from moment to moment, whether it was the past or the future, and having these moments of, like, these glimpses of the different points in time. So eventually he finally gets back to his Mobius, and they're like, all right, we got to figure this out. Obviously, this is not healthy that you're just jumping out of here in a panic. But they're able to get some help from their friend Obi, or Ouroboros, as this first episode is entitled. And he's able to help him out with this time-slipping phenomenon. He has no idea how to handle it at first, but they kind of make like a hypothetical, what would you do? How would you fix this? Things like that nature, or of that nature. So Obi tells Mobius they have to fix something with the loom. They have to kind of essentially take Loki in all these different timelines and pull him out so it's a singular entity that Loki is. So they take this machine, Mobius goes there, and it's a whole sequence of events. He needs to trigger something in the machine, and then Loki is going to kind of prune himself at the same time, which is then going to be able to yank them out as they're doing this. As Mobius is approaching the temporal loom, Loki slips to the future, and he's seeing the TVA being evacuated. Everything is going critical with the loom, and he actually encounters Sylvie. This is the first time we're seeing her in this season. she's opening an elevator and she's like, oh, hey, you're here. And he gets pruned at the last minute somehow. Lucky for him, the time works out. They're able to pull Loki from the time stream, and they kind of venture out to try and find Sylvie for her help. So that's essentially the first episode, just kind of fixing his issue of the time slipping. We go into the second episode where we're trying to find Sylvie. So Loki and Mobius are now jumping around the sacred timeline, trying to find intel that they need. A little bit of a jump, honestly, from the first episode into this, so that was a little confusing. But they're going to interrogate one of the hunters, X5. He's going to go by Brad, as he has decided to go down to the sacred timeline and live out his life as an actor. With them getting him, he finally, after a lot of kind of interesting methods and eventual torture from Loki, he finally gives up that General Dox has planned on. She raided out the armory of the TVA in the last episode. She's going to prune like as many timelines as she can by essentially blowing them up to try and regain control of the TVA, or at least get things kind of back in the ways they should be in terms of control and having this one timeline similar to what they did in the past. Oh boy. I think in this attack, she winds up doing like 30% of the branches, just getting rid of them. Luckily, Loki, Mobius, and eventually Sylvie, which they find in, oh boy, the Mickey D's she's working at, wherever that was. They're able to stop General Dox. But this kind of just enhances or builds upon Sylvie's already negative feelings of the TVA, where Loki's like, no, we need this because he knows what happens with, or at least is trying to heed the warnings of He Who Remains of like, this is going to be not great. There's going to be this big war, all these dangerous variants of even more dangerous person than him. And Sylvie's not having it. So we're able to stop this attack, thank goodness. But now we have to deal with Ravonna? Renslayer. Let's just go with that. We're going to stop Renslayer. We saw in the previous season that her and Miss Minutes kind of dipped at some point. They've got a hit on her tempad, so they're going to try and stop her from whatever she is doing. And she's getting into some stuff in episode 3, titled 1893. So we open up with Miss Minutes and Renslayer going to Chicago in 1868, where they take the TVA handbook, which this becomes a very important plot point, and they drop it off at a young Victor Timely, who is a variant of He Who Remains. This is pretty much going to give him the confidence and knowledge to essentially pursue his experiments and his sciences, creating a temporal loom. We're going to jump to 93. Loki and Mobius are trying to find Renslayer and Miss Minutes, and they stumble upon Timely. He's presenting this big thing at like a World's Fair, essentially. He's presenting the loom. He has a lot of buyers, a lot of interest in the technology. He finally takes one offer and then kind of skirts out of there really quickly. Turns out the machine wasn't fully working, so he took the money and was running away from the buyer. As this is going on, Loki and Mobius are also chasing him down, trying to catch up to him. Eventually they do, or at least Loki does. And Sylvie, unfortunately, also is tracking him down. And Sylvie wants to kill him. Wants to kill the variant, get rid of it, just not even deal with any of this. Loki's able to defend Timely, and eventually Timely skirts away from them, but then reunites with Renslayer and Miss Minutes. Now, Ravonna and Minutes are kind of getting into his ear. They're like, hey, we want to restore the TVA. We need you. And Miss Minutes is using Renslayer to be like, oh, you could be his partner in crime and blah, 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 and get this power. Well, apparently Timely has trust issues or partnership issues, because every time he hears the word partner, he gets triggered and doesn't want to go through with anything. So Renslayer at one point, while they're all bonding on the boat that they're going to his lab on, to Wisconsin, she mentions partnership. Timely gets the ick and ditches her on like a little I don't know, dinghy type boat, drops her. Then Minutes is like, oh, it was only going to be us. So Minutes and Timely go to his lab. He's collecting all of his stuff before they go and, follow through with their plan. Luckily, some friends show up. Renslayer shows up and I believe turns off Miss Minutes. Loki and Mobius arrive along with Sylvie. Yes. They're able to stop that whole evilness from happening. And Sylvie finally allows Loki to go with Timely back to the TVA to try and fix things, stop it. Let's see. So, in the fight between Renslayer and Sylvie, Renslayer gets kicked through a time door. This seems to be Sylvie's signature move. Kicks her back to the end of time where Kang's dead body is kind of decomposing. Renslayer wake up Minutes again. She's like, oops, my bad. And they both notice the decaying corpse. Miss Minutes now angry that Timely has kind of betrayed her as well, because he was the one who turned her off. My apologies. Is like, that's a dangerous person to make an enemy of, someone who knows all your secrets. And she has a pretty big one for Renslayer, which will open up in the next episode. So Miss Minutes reveals that in the past, Renslayer was actually the commander for He Who Remains' army. She helped him win the big war with all of his variants to help him become in charge, to be in the position he's in. He proposed that we'll lead the TVA together and we'll go from there. Ramona leaves and He Who Remains says, hey, Miss Minutes, wipe her memory. Protocol 42 or some shit like that. So now that Renslayer knows this, she's all pissed. Like, oh, you messed with my memory. You did all this thing. Not cool. So now they have more of a vendetta and negative feelings towards Timely. So the Loom is still going catastrophic. Everything's blowing up with all these timelines, the branches. The Loom can't control it, contain it, whatever the case is. Loki is trying to use Timely, or rather get Timely's help, to help Ouroboros to figure out this throughput multiplier in order to fix the Loom, to allow for these branches to happen, to restore balance, however you want to call it. Now you get this weird paradox, and also the Ouroboros name comes into mind, because the TVA book that was written by Obi was given to Timely back in the day, who based all of his research on this book to then create this technology, which then also inspired OB and the TVA, which OB then wrote about. So it's it's the cyclical nature that each of them taught themselves. So they're working on the throughput multiplier. They find some success. Unfortunately, Timely at some point gets captured once again by Renslayer and Miss Minutes. They attempt to take over the TVA. Renslayer and Miss Minutes in this time had also tried to go recruit the general who did all the pruning of the branches in that army, who are all in jail, along with Brad the actor. None of them want to go along except for Brad, so unfortunately Ramona kills them with a little time box torture device machine, squishes them like grapes. So Brad's with them. They capture Timely, and they're trying to interrogate him and trying to figure out how to fix the TVA so they can get into control. With this going on, Sylvie and Loki are trying to find, where has Timely gone. They're able to recover him by, Obi is able to fight a little bit against the TVA failing and Miss Minutes lockout by deactivating all those safety protocols. This will deactivate Miss Minutes. This will turn off the magic suppressing devices that apparently the TVA have. Because of this, Sylvie is able to enchant Brad. He goes in, prunes Renslayer, and now Timely has been rescued by our heroes. So now we have some fun stuff, because now it's the big moment. We're going to save the Loom. We're going to fix everything. Timely has decided, you know what, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to be the one to go fix the loom. He's got to go in the little radiation suit. He's got to walk across, put the machine in. It's going to launch, and then it's going to expand the rings. All the branches are going to be fine. So we get this big hero moment with him. Great, he's going to do this thing. He gets the suit. He's got the multiplier in his hands. He runs out and eventually just gets spaghettified and torn apart, like almost immediately because of the radiation. The heroes are defeated. The temporal loom explodes. That's how we leave off episode 4. So we go into episode 5. Loki has apparently survived the explosion. Everyone else is gone. The headquarters starts falling apart and like wisping away as this branch and timeline just dissipates. We notice that Loki starts time slipping again. God damn it. He's going into different branch timelines where he's finding his friends again, but he's finding them in their original lives. We see B-15 is a doctor. We see Casey is a guy escaping from Alcatraz. OB is is a writer/scientist who can't sell his books, unfortunately. And we have Mobius, who is a jet ski salesman and is a father of 2 sons, a single dad. So Loki is slipping from time to time. Eventually, when he finds OB, he asks for his help because he's like, hey, you're smart, obviously. He's like, we need to figure this out. So OB has humors the idea because he writes science fiction, so he really just takes all this information in without even a question of like, this is weird and you're telling me things that don't even exist or weird pasts or whatever like everybody else would. But he has no idea how he's going to tackle this. He doesn't have the technology or the knowledge. Loki notices, hey, I have the TVA handbook in my jacket. So he gives OB, or rather Doug in this universe, his identity, gives him the TVA handbook and asks him to see what he can do, try and learn what he can. So let's see. Doug is able to build a TemPad. How this works out, Loki tries to go talk to Mobius again. They have a pretty good heart-to-heart, but obviously Mobius is getting a little bit intimidated with Loki and the truths that he's telling him. Doug shows up at the TemPad, successful. It took him 19 months, apparently, in his timeline, or where he was in the timeline. But they need to essentially gather everyone together to try and figure out how to get back to the temporal loom before it explodes. Loki doesn't know how to get there. He can't control this time slipping, as Doug has suggested. So maybe with everybody who was in the room present, they'll be able to work together to collectively get to that point. So through a lot of explanation, they're able to get Mobius back. They're able to get B-15 back. They're able to get Casey back. So they got to get one more person. They got to get Sylvie back there. So Loki goes to the Mickey D's that she's working at. And Sylvie recognizes him. He doesn't have to do a whole rigmarole of introduction, I assume, because she's a variant and doesn't have a alternative life. It doesn't have a life on the timeline. She kind of had to make her own. And also she's a Loki variant, so I don't know if that plays in. But anyways, she knows everything. She's like, yep, sure thing. But she doesn't want to help out. So, refusing to help, Loki leaves and loses all motivation because of what she tells him. Like, you're not letting people choose, you're being selfish, you just want this for yourself. She gets that out of him. She continues her life. We see her go to a record store, apparently, that she frequents. Is jamming out to some music, and unfortunately, the timeline around her starts spaghettifying, for lack of a better term. It's just fun to say. Starts going away. Luckily, she has her TemPad, so she's able to escape and goes to where Loki is. She explains what's happened, and they're all like, oh, great, we're all here. We could do this. Where's the TemPad? They all look at Casey, who's the criminal, and he's like, hey, I didn't steal it. I would. I want to break into some bank vaults and stuff, but he doesn't do it. Turns out the TemPad has dissipated because Casey starts dissipating, and then one by one they all start blipping away. Loki, in a panic with all this, finally gains control of his time slipping by focusing on a person, apparently, declaring he can rewrite the story. He's going to slip back to right before the explosion, focusing on Obi. So that's where we leave off on episode 5. Now we get to episode 6, Glorious Purpose. Do you guys like montages? Because I sure do. Especially when we're at the conclusion of a story and time travel's involved. So he slips back to the moment right before the explosion. He attempts to try it again, fix things. It fails. He realizes, okay, we just need to keep trying. He tries to go faster with it and faster after he asked OB in the past before he zipped over this part. My apologies. What can we do different? And Obi simply just said, we need to go faster. So Loki took that very literally, where we need to go faster through this last moment and try things. Tries it a few times, doesn't work. Slips back even farther before and keeps trying to fix things. This eventually leads to him even trying to learn the chemistry, astrophysics, all the stuff that OB and Casey kind of know. So he takes centuries to learn this by just looping around or whatever he's doing. So by the end of it, he's just talking the whole plan. He's just talking really fast, talking everybody through it, talking about the models, the sciences, everything. They try it again. This time, luckily, Timely goes out. He survives all this patchwork. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. He's able to get to the time machine, or the loom rather, the whatever thing that they need to get to. He gets to that. He adds the multiplier, shoots it into the timeline after a quick bug, but he's fine, as Loki's talking him all through this. He starts making his way back. He succeeds. We're all happy. We're stoked. Loki's enthused. He spent so much time his time doing this. An error happens. It's not working. It's not taking. The building of infinite upon infinite realities just keeps growing. There's no way to handle this. And Loki kind of freaks out. And he's like, I got to go even farther. I got to figure out what's going on. So he eventually goes so far back that he's at the moment where Sylvie is trying to kill He Who Remains. And we get to another montage of him trying to stop her from killing He Who Remains. He gets stabbed so many times off camera. Eventually, Loki is able to pause time because he's got so much control of this time slipping that he's finally learned. And him and He Who Remains have a conversation. Now, in this moment, He Who Remains kind of has a lot more of a different tonality than I remember in the end of season 1 when he's finally revealed. I don't know. That seemed weird to me. So I don't know if this was a different variant or if it's just he's done playing this character. I don't know. That might have been just something I noticed or kind of questioned. But he's like, He Remains is like, you can't fix this. You know, it's either you allow this to happen and infinite timelines happen and a war destroys everything, or you need to kill Sylvie so she doesn't kill me, pretty much. Loki doesn't want to do either of those. So he goes even farther back, has one more good chat with Mobius in his like initial interrogation interview type thing when he was captured as a variant. And he's like, good chat. He knows what he has to do. He zips over to where the loom is exploding. Or not exploding, but just before when they're doing the whole procedure. And he smiles at his friends and realizes he needs to do it. So he goes down to the room, locks everybody out, doesn't put the suit on, and walks down towards the temporal loom. As this is happening, loom explodes, I believe. No, he destroys the loom. That's right. As he's walking down, his clothes are kind of getting dissipated and torn off because all the radiation. Magically, he spawns a green cloak in his outfit with the horns and everything. He destroys the loom himself. And we just see this explosion of branches go everywhere. And these are the timelines. Apparently they're dying. So magically, he's reaching out and he's slowly rejuvenating timeline by timeline by timeline. He's just grabbing them, walking on this path, which eventually opens up to the end of time. He walks up this path. The tethers and branches are also from his cape. And as he's doing this, his friends see him going, and he has now committed himself to overseeing the branches of the timeline. He sits down on this throne at the end of time, rejuvenates them all with his magic, and kind of forms like this tree-like structure, kind of calling back to the world tree, if we're going to think about Thor and stuff like that originally. So he's just chilling on a chair. Now we get the aftermath. We get to see the TVA is now back in action. Miss Minutes has been restored. A new Miss Minutes, rather, has been built. B-15 seems to be in charge. And they're heading to the war room, her and Mobius, to figure out, I guess, what's next. They quickly talk about the He Who Remains variants, trying to figure out where they are so they can take care of them. We get a little shout out that Earth 616 had a variant. They already taken care of it. Shout out to the Ant-Man movie. So, great. They figured out that. So they're going to the war room, and Mobius decides this is not for me. He's going to go see what his life would have been. So he doesn't go, and he just watches, himself and his kids kind of enjoying their life. I don't know what he's going to do from here. But Sylvie offers a goodbye to him and wishes him the best of luck. The only other thing that I think that we do see that Timely back as a child does not receive the TVA handbook. So at least he himself will not be enveloped into this. And we also see Renslayer awaking in the void where Eliath is waiting for her. That big kind of monster that takes all the pruning stuff and eats it and is like a garbage disposal. So interesting. It seems like Loki is now the timekeeper. It doesn't seem like he's going to be writing time or anything like that. He's just there kind of protecting them, I guess. Does this mean it's the end of Loki and we'll never see him again? I kind of feel like it is. I don't know how he could leave his post, but who knows? I'm a little surprised. I thought we would have more of like an evil Kang, or like who came after the He Who Remains stuff. Like obviously we got the Timely stuff, which was cool to see that journey and have that parallel of a good variant of his. But I thought at least how we ended season 1 with all the different statues and stuff like that, it was going to be a new Kang is in charge, the evil there, and then eventually that Kang would be the big bad eventually for whatever is next with the Secret Wars or whatever kind of combination movie they do run into eventually. But it seems like that's not the case. Obviously, we did get the tease, I believe it was at the end of Ant-Man 3, with all the different Kangs, the variants kind of meeting. So there is still potential for that. Now we start getting to the icky stuff. Do we still go with Kang? We definitely can, but we got some legal troubles going on with Mr. Majors here. So recast could work. I've heard a lot of different, I've seen a lot of things going around of like, okay, do we just hard turn, steer the ship a different way? Do we go Doctor Doom? Do we bring back old cast members already? Like, we're in a bit of a pickle with this. I don't think you need to do a hard turn. I say stick with the plan. If you need to recast. You already recasted twice early on in the days with Phase 1. With, War Machine and Hulk. I understand this is a little different because it's more recent, a villain, whatever you want to call it. I don't... You can't let real life step on this, I guess, that hard. I think we would be forgiving as an audience, like, okay, we get it. It's a different person. Whatever. It's no big deal. I don't think you need to just crumble the whole plan that I hope they have. I know eventually we're getting a Fantastic Four movie Doom's probably going to be in there, so I don't think you need to copy paste, put Doom in here now, and just kind of scrap everything. I'm curious. I'm really curious to know the timeline of everything, as we're talking time here, like where the branching has affected our other like movie stuff. Well, I guess anything, even the other shows and whatnot. Like, how has it affected everything else? What is being manipulated by this one branch? This whole series, they did mention that the Sacred Timeline is still going on. So is our MCU movie canon, is that still just the Sacred Timeline? If so, okay, that's fair enough. I don't think it's really bled over into any other series. Obviously with Doctor Strange we got multiverse stuff, and with Spider-Man No Way Home we got the crossover, but from there I don't think we've had anything else just yet. Curious if this has any type of implication on the Marvels which just released. Don't think it will, but who knows. And then as for Easter eggs, I really only noticed one. When we first went to the temporal loom, that door kind of looked like the Cerebro door with the big X. That was the only thing I caught. I'm sure there's people way better than me that have picked up on some things, so I would definitely go check out that stuff if you're interested. But yeah, overall season was good. Like I said, I enjoyed it a lot more just because we were kind of in the thick of things. We had the groundwork laid out. We were able to jump into the story with the tenseness, go into that, see what was going on, and try and figure this out. But yeah, I don't know really what's going on from here. I would assume this is where it stops, because once again, it's a little tough to be like, hey, Loki, you're sitting on this chair managing all the timelines. Can you get up and go fight things? Like, he might be done, which is a little sad because we've kind of grown to love this character. So I don't know if we'll see him again. Obviously, Secret Wars is far, far down the line. With all the branching timelines now being available to us, makes sense. And it also seems like, is that the war that Kang was talking about that just is giant and leaves everyone dead? If it is, then somehow Loki has to kind of not be protecting the timelines. So maybe he does show up again with some finagling there. But it's hard to say. It's hard to say without a Kang kind of in that position of timelines. But maybe their technology, as they alluded to in the first one, with them finding each other, as once again we've already seen, maybe that'll lead to it. What's their motivation? Not sure. We'll have to see. But yeah. But anyways, guys, this has been the Marvel Plus Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed Loki Season 2. I know this was a little bit more shoddy of a recap review, but I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I'm interested to know what your thoughts and feelings are about it so far. Where do you think things are going to go? What's going to change? Where are they going to go from here with any of the characters? But yeah. My name's Bret, aka Enigma9011. If you guys ever want to catch this podcast live recording, you can always go over to twitch.tv/Enigma9011. You can drop a follow over there. You'll get notified when we go live. Join the chat, join the discussion on all the fun theory talk. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube the very next day, where it is there for your amusement. Watch, listen, enjoy it, all those fun things. But I appreciate you guys hanging out today with me, giving this a watch, giving it a listen, and we'll see you guys on the next one.